13-year-old Tristan Mullis walked toward the red shed on his family's property in Ulville, Iowa, not knowing yet what he was about to find. He opened the door. His mother, Amy, was on the floor, face down, a corn rake sticking out of her back. He called for his dad. Todd pulled the rake from Amy's body, placed Amy in his truck, and drove toward the hospital. During the drive, he called 911. He told the dispatcher Amy must have fallen. An accident. A terrible freak accident on the farm. It almost worked. What broke Todd Mullis's story wasn't a witness. It wasn't a confession. It was something so simple it's almost hard to believe. A corn rake has 4 tines. Amy Mullis had 6 puncture wounds in her back. The math, as one investigator put it, simply wasn't adding up. From there, what investigators found, on a tablet, in a search history, and in an interrogation room 6 days after Amy died, began to paint a very different picture. This is the story of Amy Lynn Mullis, a nurse, a mother of 3, a woman whose friends gave her a nickname that tells you everything you need to know about the marriage she was trapped in. She stayed for her kids. She tried to hold it together. And when she finally started planning a way out, her husband had already started planning something else. Amy Lynn Fuller was born on January 23, 1979, in Ames, Iowa. The daughter of Robert and Peggy Fuller, she grew up in the Eldora area in the rolling farmland of Hardin County and graduated from Eldora New Providence High School in 1997. The people who knew her then all said the same thing. She was warm. She was quick to laugh. She never had to try to make people like her. It just happened. After school, Amy set her heart on nursing. She enrolled at Kirkwood Community College, qualified as a registered nurse, and went to work at St. Luke's Hospital in Cedar Rapids. Then she moved to the emergency room at the Regional Medical Center in Manchester. In the ER, she was exactly who you'd want beside you when things went wrong, steady under pressure, good with frightened patients, practical and caring at the same time. It was the summer of 2003 that Amy's life took a turn. She went to the Delaware County Fair, the kind of fair that marks the farming year, livestock and late summer sunshine, and the whole county showing up. That's where she met Todd Mullis, a farmer, hardworking, passionate about the land. They started seeing each other, and on September 11, 2004, they got married at Our Savior Lutheran Church in Manchester. Amy moved on to Todd's farm in Ulville. 3 children came along: Tristan, Taylor, and Wyatt. As the family grew, Amy stepped back from the ER and became a full-time partner in running the farm. A stay-at-home mother who was also an active member of the Delaware County Pork Producers Board. She genuinely loved farming. She loved the life they were building. Above everything else, she was completely devoted to her children. Friends talked about the kids as the absolute center of her world. She called Tristan, her eldest, an extremely talented kid. She watched him play football and talked about him the way parents do when they're genuinely bursting with pride. Whatever was going wrong inside her marriage, and something had been going wrong for a long time, she stayed. She tried to hold it together. She stayed for her kids even as the world around her got smaller. The problems inside the marriage started surfacing in 2013. Amy had an affair with a man she met through work, the kind of thing that breaks a marriage at its roots. Todd and Amy went to counseling. By most accounts, they got back on track. But what changed in the years after was Todd. He became controlling, methodical about it, in the way that the most effective kinds of control often are. He wanted to know where Amy was at all times. He tracked her movements. He kept track of how long she was gone, when she left, and expected her to account for her comings and goings. Amy's closest friends would give her a nickname: Pot, prisoner of Todd. At first it sounded like a joke. It wasn't. Amy laughed about it with them. The way people sometimes laugh about things that aren't funny at all, because putting a name on something painful makes it a little more bearable. But the name told you the reality. She couldn't leave the house without checking in. She couldn't come and go freely. The world outside the farm. All of it had been replaced by a life where Todd controlled the parameters. In the summer of 2018, Amy started a second affair. The man was Jerry Frazier, the field manager on the Mullis farm. By Frazier's own account, the relationship was mainly physical on his side, though he believed Amy felt more strongly. The two exchanged a lot of messages. Todd noticed. He went through the phone records, counted the texts, and grew suspicious. He called Frazier's wife, who told him he had nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Amy was talking to her own circle. She told a close friend the affair with Jerry was real and that she wanted a divorce. She told Frazier directly that if Todd ever found out, she would disappear. She called a co-worker named Deborah Sherbering, crying so hard she could barely speak. She asked if any rumors had gotten out. And then she said, if her husband Todd finds out, he would kill her. Two people heard that warning. They would later repeat those exact words in a courtroom. Because Amy wasn't speaking metaphorically. She knew who Todd Mullis was inside that farmhouse in a way nobody else could fully see. Todd Mullis had built his life around one thing: the farm. He started farming at 11 years old. By the time he married Amy, he already owned his first farm. By 2018, the operation stretched across 3 farms and part of a 4th. It was a multi-million-dollar hog enterprise that he had built from the ground up over 2 decades. It wasn't just how he made money. It was who he was. Every conversation, every decision, every relationship he had ran through that land. A divorce from Amy meant Iowa's marital property laws carved that operation in half. Half the land, half the operation, half of the identity he had spent his whole adult life constructing. He had said it out loud, more than once, to more than one person: I'm not going to lose my farm and what I've worked for. By November 2018, the Mullis farm in Ulville was getting ready for a delivery of baby pigs, the kind of work that fills the early morning hours on a hog operation. Physical, hands-on, all in. Amy, Todd, and their eldest son Tristan, 13 years old, were all out working that morning. Amy had recently had outpatient surgery. She was still recovering, but she was out there with her family doing what needed doing. Then, inside the hog barn, she said she wasn't feeling well. She was getting dizzy. She tried to steady herself by climbing onto a bucket and had to hold on to stop herself from falling. Her legs were shaking. Todd told her to go back to the house and rest. But first, he had a job for her. He asked her to go and get a pet carrier from one of the sheds on the property. Amy walked away from the barn toward the red shed. An hour and a half passed. Maybe longer. It was Tristan who went to check on his mother, 13 years old, walking across his family's property toward a red shed, not knowing yet what he was about to find. He found her face down on the floor, the corn rake sticking out of her back. He called for his dad. Todd pulled the rake out, carried Amy to his truck, and drove. He called 911 on the way, told the dispatcher she must have fallen. The dispatcher told him to pull over and let the paramedics come to him. Amy was taken by ambulance to the Regional Medical Center in Manchester. She was pronounced dead on arrival. At first, no one questioned Todd's explanation. On a working farm, tragic accidents can happen. And that's exactly what many people believe this was. In the days immediately after Amy's death, the farming community around Ulville extended Todd the sympathy it extends to grieving widowers. A terrible accident. A tragic morning on a farm. A man who had tried desperately to get his wife to the hospital. His son had found her. The family was in shock. The accident story had a clean internal logic. Amy had recently had surgery. She had been dizzy that morning. The shed was on their property. A corn rake was a completely ordinary farm tool that sat in sheds all across Iowa. There was no obvious crime scene. There was no obvious suspect. The first thing that broke the accident story was the simplest. Dr. Craig Thompson, the medical director of emergency services at the hospital where Amy was taken, examined her injuries himself when she arrived. He had been told it was a freak accident, a weak woman, a fall onto a corn rake. He found 6 puncture wounds across her back. The corn rake had 4 tines. I found it very difficult to see how 4 tines could cause 6 holes in a single impact, Dr. Thompson told investigators. He flagged it immediately. The case was sent to the Iowa State Medical Examiner's office. Dr. Kelly Cruz, the forensic pathologist who carried out Amy's autopsy, went through everything carefully. The 6 wounds were not consistent with a single fall. Some went back to front, right to left, and downward. The leftmost wounds went upward, a completely different angle. 2 separate striking angles. 2 separate moments of force. Consistent with the rake being used at least twice, possibly 3 times, with Amy in different positions when each blow came. Dr. Cruz also found injuries on Amy's face, her hands, and her knees. Injuries consistent with struggling. She ruled the death a homicide. Deputy Travis Hemsath of the Delaware County Sheriff's Department contacted Special Agent John Turbot of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, who took over. Turbot's first job was to rule out everyone else. Jerry Frazier, Amy's affair partner, the farm's field manager, was an obvious early name. Cell tower data placed Frazier solidly in Anamosa, over 40 miles from the Mullis farm, from 10:14 in the morning all the way through to after Todd made the 911 call. Frazier and his wife were eliminated as suspects. That left one person. 6 days after Amy died, Turbot sat across from Todd Mullis in an interview room and told him directly what the medical examiner had found. That Amy's death was a homicide. That the evidence was clear. That Todd was responsible. That had noted something else throughout the interview. No shock, no outrage, no denial from the gut. Just a man who had been waiting for this conversation. Police executed 19 simultaneous search warrants across the Mullis property and recovered every piece of electronics they could find. They got a search warrant for Google. What came back was 700 pages of search history tied to Todd Mullis's iPad and his personal Gmail, a record that stretched from December 2017 right through to the days before Amy died. This is where the case goes from a disputed accident to something else entirely. Back in January 2018, 10 months before Amy died, Todd searched for how to secretly conduct a DNA test on someone. That's not a History Channel curiosity. That's a man who suspected his wife of something and wanted to confirm it without her knowing. Then the searches escalated. Over the following months, Todd searched, killing unfaithful women. What happens to cheaters in history? Did ancient cultures kill adulterers? What happened to cheating spouses in historic Aztec tribes? Was killing more accepted centuries ago? Thrill of the kill, thrill of the hunt. Famous quote, no thrill like that of hunting man. Once you hunt man, you will always feel the thirst. What to do with large, open chest wounds, organs in the body. He also searched Jerry Frazier's name and Frazier's wife's name multiple times. Now here is the detail that matters most about the timing of those searches. The ones about punishing cheating women, about Aztec-style justice, about the thrill of the hunt. Those started months before anyone outside that marriage knew about Amy's affair in 2018. These were not spur-of-the-moment searches made in a fit of anger after a confrontation. They happened again and again, across months. That is not a crisis. That is a pattern. That is a man who had decided something and was sitting with it, quietly, while farming and raising children and pretending everything was fine. Prosecutors argued Todd exploited the fact that Amy was recovering from outpatient surgery because it made an accidental fall seem more believable. She had been weak. She had been dizzy that same morning. Tristan had witnessed it. She might have fallen. A terrible accident. The surgery gave the staging a layer of plausibility it wouldn't otherwise have had. The Mullis farm had surveillance cameras, including one pointed directly at the red shed where Amy was found. That camera had footage going back weeks. The footage from the days leading up to November 10th, including the morning itself, was simply absent. It resumed the day after Amy died. Investigators could not confirm whether it had been deliberately deleted. A camera that records everything except the day of the murder is not a coincidence that helps a defendant. A multi-million-dollar hog operation across 3 farms and part of a 4th, built since the age of 11, was the entirety of Todd's financial and personal identity. A divorce entitled Amy to half. He had told people, more than once, going back as far as the first affair in 2013, "I'm not going to lose my farm and what I've worked for." Prosecutor Marie Hughes told the jury plainly, being a farmer means everything to him. He has put his life into that farm. The defendant had to find a way to keep his farm. The iPad searches are what stay with you longest. Not because they're surprising, darker things get searched every day, but because of what the order tells you. The searches about punishing unfaithful women started before the 2018 affair was even known. That means Todd wasn't reacting. He was already there, already in that headspace, already sitting with something. While Amy was working the farm, parenting the kids, going to pork producers' board meetings. And while all of that was happening, he was searching about Aztec justice for cheating spouses. Those searches did not come from the History Channel. And they did not come from Amy, who the defense suggested also used the device. Prosecutors argued those searches weren't random curiosities. They reflected someone repeatedly returning to the same disturbing ideas over the course of months. The prosecution put it simply, Todd Mullis believed his wife was going to cost him his farm, and he had spent months thinking about what to do about that before he ever picked up a corn rake. Nearly 4 months after Amy's death, investigators believed they had enough evidence to move forward. They had the autopsy, the search history, Amy's warnings, the interrogation, and what they believed was a staged accident. On February 28, 2019, Todd Mullis was arrested for first-degree murder. He was taken into custody. He entered a plea of not guilty. The trial was moved out of Delaware County to Dubuque. Too many people in Ulville and the surrounding area already knew the case. Finding 12 impartial jurors in a community that small was impossible. The trial opened on September 16, 2019 at the Dubuque County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed on day 1. Prosecutor Marie Hughes began by naming Amy. Amy had so much life left to live, but that life was viciously taken from her on November 10, 2018. Taken at the hands of this defendant. Then Todd's defense attorney Gerald Farhelm said something that surprised almost everyone in the room. He agreed Amy had been murdered deliberately and intentionally. That much he wasn't going to contest. What he contested was who did it. There was reasonable doubt, he said, about whether Todd was the killer. He suggested an unknown intruder had been in the shed. The jury spent 6 days hearing testimony. Dr. Cruz walked them through Amy's injuries, 6 wounds, different angles, injuries on Amy's face and knees consistent with struggling. Jerry Frazier testified about the affair and confirmed his alibi. Special Agent Turbot testified about the investigation, the interrogation, and Todd's flat, emotionless response when Turbot told him the evidence showed he was responsible. Tristan, 14 by the time the trial happened, testified about finding his mother and what he saw that morning. Todd took the stand. He denied killing Amy. He denied making the iPad searches. He said multiple family members used the device, that Amy had set the password, that the searches could have come from TV shows or random conversations about Native Americans or the History Channel. The 911 call was played multiple times. Prosecutor Hughes pressed Todd about the whisper caught on the recording during chest compressions. Todd denied knowing what was said, said he couldn't make it out. After a little over 7 hours of deliberation, the jury came back. On September 23, 2019, Todd Mullis was found guilty of first-degree murder. Todd grimaced. He shook his head. They shackled him and let him out. On the other side of the room, Amy's brother Jeff Fuller wept. He told a reporter outside that the family wasn't going to make any comments. First-degree murder in Iowa carries a mandatory sentence. Life in prison, no possibility of parole. There is no judicial discretion at that level. The conviction determines the outcome. What the mandatory structure cannot do is account for what Tristan, Taylor, and Wyatt Mullis are left with. A father convicted of planning and carrying out the murder of their mother. No version of that becomes bearable. A sentence closes the legal chapter. It does not touch what those 3 children are left to carry for the rest of their lives. At sentencing, Todd had this to say, "I did not do this. This is supposed to be America where you shouldn't have to prove your innocence. I thought it was innocent until proven guilty. I feel this is the other way around. And I was a faithful and loving husband." The Iowa Court of Appeals reviewed every piece of that evidence in 2022 and upheld the conviction. Todd has since filed for post-conviction relief, arguing ineffective assistance of counsel. As of early 2025, those hearings were still ongoing. He maintains through his lawyers that Amy's death was an accident and that he never had a fair chance to put that case to the jury. The searches are still in the record, all 700 pages. Amy's friends, the ones she laughed with, the ones she told she was scared, the ones who gave her the nickname Pod, because what else can you do when you're watching someone you love disappear into a controlling marriage, carried her warnings with them into a courtroom, and made sure a jury heard every word. Amy Mullis's case sits at the intersection of 2 things that don't get examined enough together: domestic financial control and intimate partner violence in rural communities. The farm wasn't just a backdrop. It was the mechanism. Todd's identity, his leverage, his reason, all of it ran through that land. Amy's ability to leave, her financial entanglement, her isolation on a working farm in a small county, all of it made leaving harder and staying more dangerous. She named it anyway. She called it what it was to the people closest to her. She laughed about being prisoner of Todd because naming something gives you at least a little power over it. She told 3 people she was afraid. She was planning to leave. She was 39 years old with her whole life ahead of her. The nursing career she had set aside for the farm, the children she was completely devoted to, all of it was still possible. She was building towards something. Todd made sure she never got there. If there's one thing Amy's story reminds us, it's that fear should never become a normal part of a relationship. No one should have to laugh off controlling behavior just to survive another day. If you see yourself in her story, please don't convince yourself that you have to face it alone. The people who care about you would rather hear your voice today than wish they had listened tomorrow. You deserve safety. You deserve peace. And you deserve to be believed. If you found this story touching, please consider sharing it with someone else. And if you haven't already, subscribe. It helps us continue telling the stories that deserve to be remembered, not for the crimes that ended them, but for the lives that came before. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.